everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Best MTG Decks Ever. I'm your host Joseph, and today we're going to be going over some cards that I find very useful for Commander that are in the new set, Lost Caverns of Ixilan. Let's go take a look. First up, we've got Fanatical Offering, 1 colorless, 1 black. It's an instant, reads, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Draw 2 cards and create a map token. Map token is an artifact with pay 1 colorless, tap, sacrifice this artifact, target creature you control, explores, activate only as a sorcery. This is going to be very useful in a lot of black decks. You could be, and because it's an instant, say for instance you have something like an Ophiomancer on the board, you pass turn to your opponent, it creates a 1/1 creature. At the end of their turn, you can cast Fanatical Offering, sacrifice the snake. You'll be able to draw 2 cards, so you gain card advantage. You also create the map token, and if you have something else on the board that takes advantage of the sack outlet, like maybe you've got some sort of an aristocrat setup, then you also get that, and it's just a pretty good card. Next up, we've got another black card. It's called Bitter Triumph. Again, 1 colorless, 1 black, and it's an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card or pay 3 life to destroy a target creature, Planeswalker. And in Commander, we've got a lot of life, so at any point in time, we can use this card. We can pay 3 life, and we can destroy a creature or a Planeswalker. It's very useful and very versatile. Up next, we've got Dauntless Dismantler. It is 1 colorless, 1 white. It is a creature. Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tap. X, white mana. Sacrifice Dauntless Dismantler. Destroy each artifact with mana value X. This is a wonderful card for Stacks decks, as well as a card that you might want to include in some sort of a meta where there's artifacts you might want to destroy. I'm pretty excited to see like how it will fit into currently existing Stacks decks. We've got Kutul, Malamet, Exemplar, 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 white. That's kind of the setback on this card because it's Selesnya. So you're going to have to run green and white to play this, but it's got good abilities. It's got a Grand Abolisher effect, so your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. We also have another good ability. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So we've got possible draw value off of this. And it's also a pretty hefty body at 3/3. Up next, we got a white card, Helping Hand. It's a sorcery. Return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It's just pretty useful recursion for 1 mana. We've got Roaming Throne, 4 colorless artifact creature. It's got Ward 2. As Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. The reason why I like this card is because it is colorless. You can slate it in any deck. Any deck where the commander has a triggered ability on it could potentially use this to just double that trigger. It's 4 mana cost, but it's also a 4/4 body. Not too bad. And we'll see how it plays out in games. Up next, this is not a new card, but it's a card that needed a reprinting bad. Growing Rights of Itlimoc. Growing Rights of Itlimoc reads, when Growing Rights of Itlimoc enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Growing Rights of Itlimoc. And it turns into a land, which is basically a Gaia's Cradle. Add 1 green for each creature you control. Very OP. Next, we've got Get Lost. 1 colorless, 1 white. It's an instant. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. I like this card for its versatility. You can hit a creature, you can hit an enchantment, or a planeswalker. Downside is you're giving your opponent 2 map tokens, but it's not too big of a deal, and just keep it for those clutch moments where it's absolutely needed. Next, we've got Molten Collapse. It is 1 black, 1 red, sorcery. Choose 1. But if you descend to this turn, you may choose both instead. We would want to put this into some sort of a Rakdos deck where there's going to be sacrifice or some way of getting permanent cards into the graveyard from anywhere. And that is going to allow us to destroy a creature or a planeswalker and a non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. Here's a cool card that it might be being slept on, but we'll see. It is Matzatlantli, the Great Door. We'll just call it Matza. It has a tap ability, draw a card, then discard a card. Then we have another tap ability, which has an activator for colorless, and then we transform it. But we have to have 4 permanent types among cards in our graveyard. So it could be artifact, battle, creature, enchantment, land, planeswalker. When it is transformed, it is very powerful. It is tap to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So if you have 10 permanent cards in your graveyard, you tap this, and you gain 10 mana of any one color that you want. I see this card shining on mid-rangey decks that last out and then kind of build graveyards and doing nasty things. Very interested to see the results with this card in play. Please leave a comment if you've had any cool interactions or stories with this card. I'm very curious to hear about them. Next up, Cavern of Souls, just reprinted. You just use it to cast your commander. That's absolutely needed to make sure he doesn't get countered. We've got a white card, Ojir Tak, Deepest Foundation. Now, it's got a big casting cost, 4 colorless, 2 white, legendary creature god. It's Vigilant 6/6. But the cool thing about this is if you create creature tokens, you create 3 times that many tokens, which is huge. Here we've got one of my favorite legendary creatures, Ghalta. Can't get enough of Ghalta. And this Ghalta is particularly powerful. Ghalta Stampede Tyrant, 5 colorless, 3 green. Trample 12/12, of course. When Ghalta Stampede Tyrant enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. I am going to be building a deck around this guy. I can't wait. Basically, we just want to have huge creatures and have them in our hand. I would imagine that the deck is going to be something like a ton of ramp and then a ton of huge creatures. Nothing in between. It's just going to be a bunch of cheap ramp and huge creatures. And all we're doing is we're racing to play Ghalta, and then when Ghalta enters the battlefield, you vomit your hand onto the battlefield and hope no one has a board wipe. Maybe you got a heroic intervention in your hand. Can't wait. I'm more hyped about this card than anything else just because I'm a Ghalta fan. This card is insane. Bone Horde Dracosaur, 3 colorless, 2 red, flying first strike 5/5. Now, it's got more text. Let's read this. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. If you exiled a land card this way, create a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, you create a treasure token. So you don't even need to attack with this. It will need to survive 1 round, but at every single turn, for free, you have the chance of creating either 2 3/1 red dinosaur tokens or 2 treasure tokens or any combination of those. You get 2 extra cards for card advantage that you have to play that turn. And then if you're already running it in a deck that takes value from exiling cards, you're going to get even more value. This thing is insane. Like in Prosper, think about this in Prosper. You have this on the board. It goes to your next turn. You exile 2 non-land cards, all right? And you create 2 treasure tokens. And then you cast those 2 cards with Prosper, and you create 2 more treasure tokens. So just having this on the battlefield gave you 4 mana, 2 card advantage, and it's just a beefy body. Flying first strike 5/5. This is amazing. Love it. It's going to go in my Prosper deck. Last but not least, we've got Sahili, the Sun's Brilliance. 1 blue, 1 red, 2/2. And she reads, activate 1 blue, 1 red, and tap. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste. That's the big thing. It gains haste. Sacrifice at the beginning of the next step. That ability is really powerful. You could do all sorts of fun stuff with that. I'm not going to go into every single possible combo. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Those are just some cards that stuck out to me from this latest set that I think would be good in Commander. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.